Paranormal Science Lab Live. I'm Lisa.
I'm John.
And John's having a fun day today.
We're going to start a new thing starting this week. Send me a hat. I will wear it on air. This came from Harry Wheeler. Brought it to a tour last night. Gave it to me. So, guess what? I got a Furby hat.
So make it the most ridiculous thing you can find, and he'll wear it.
I will. I have no problem with it at all.
Getting going here. We're very pleased to have our guest today, Rob Garcia of Elite Paranormal in Kansas City, Missouri. Rob, how you doing?
Doing good, thanks.
I understand you were investigating last night.
Yeah, I was. I did a case at a drive-in. It's kind of an iconic Kansas City location called the Boulevard Drive-In.
Oh, cool. What kind of activity did they have at the drive-in?
They had just had a lot of creepy feelings and shadow play and stuff like that. I mean, they didn't really have a huge history of paranormal activity, but they asked us to do it, and we decided to go ahead, and our schedule cleared out, so we went in there and did it last night. So
cool.
it was kind of a neat thing.
I always I like doing locations like that are not what you typically think of as a haunted location, and I think we find that you get some of the more interesting evidence that way.
Yeah, I mean that's what it was. I mean, I didn't really have any expectations. Well, I try to go into all my cases with no expectations, but with that one, I've been there to see movies. I've been there for events. They have all kinds of stuff that goes on there, but I never really thought about investigating it until they asked us. And it's also part of there's like a local old-time horror movie host show, so they filmed us while we investigated for that show that's broadcast locally here. So
cool.
Sometime in the future we'll be on that channel for that Midnight Movie Maniacs, I believe is what it's called.
Oh, very cool, very cool. You'll have to update us if you got any evidence or anything cool off of that.
Yeah, definitely. You have to get out there and start getting through the stuff.
Rob, why don't we start out? I want to introduce you a little bit to our viewers. I know some of them know you, some of them don't. Tell us a little bit about how you got into the field.
Well, I actually got into the field via history more than paranormal. My education is computer science and history, and obviously I do the computer science part for a living, but the history part, still has a part of me. So, any chance I had to go to historical locations, I would. And I love Civil War history, and I love especially the Civil War history here in Missouri and Kansas. Mm-hmm. And so, I got invited years ago to go to a site with a paranormal group, and then I really was more interested in the history part. But once I was there, I figured out, hey, I get to go behind the scenes in this place. It's not just the stuff that on the museum tour. I get to go behind the scenes, so that was a big draw. And then a local group was advertising for members, and I ended up joining that group, and it was Kansas City Paranormal Research, which was my previous organization that I was with before. And that ran for a while until it kind of wore out, and then once it stopped, well, I'd already investigated quite a few places, so I reformed as Elite Paranormal of Kansas City with one of my co-founder, Wes, who was also a member of that. And then, we've been going, 8 years now. So we've been investigating as Elite for quite a while.
I know you guys have investigated some very iconic places in Kansas City and have gotten some pretty awesome evidence. What are some of your favorite locations?
I think probably in the Kansas City Metro, my favorite location for me is the Alexander Major's house, because it's kind of where I had some of my best experiences and some of the more interesting stuff that isn't just audio. It's where we actually captured a shadow going up the stairs and morphing and changing into different forms. And, when I go there, it always seems to be active. I think that's probably one of my favorite places to go, it's an antebellum home here, one of the few surviving in the region. So I love to go there. Warnell House, it's always a great place as well. Another place here in the metro that's an antebellum home. There's quite a few locations here that are really interesting. But then, I like to get off the beaten track and find new places that no one's ever really thought about going to before. So that's also kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, I think sometimes finding new locations that haven't been hunted, you tend to find new kinds of evidence and sometimes more spectacular evidence. What would you say is your most compelling experience you've had?
I think probably for me the most compelling, like I have to say, this is paranormal, would probably be like at Villisca Axe Murder House, because the first time I ever went, it was, I've done, over the years now, I've probably done so many home cases and then all these historical locations, but I would say none of them were nearly as dark when you stepped into the place and as that location. Now that was just the one time I was there. The second time I was there, it was totally different atmosphere. So but that first time we went in there, that place, you could just feel that darkness change as you step through the threshold. And
an interesting thing there, and I always, when I talk to people who have investigated at Villisca, I always ask, because I have a real good friend who grew up within a few miles of there and actually did sleepovers in the house when it was still a residence. And so I hear stories from her as to, did I hurt you? I'm sorry. And from her as to experiences of the people who live there, and then I like to hear what experiences people have investigating. Did you find that the activity seemed to be from the victims or from the killer?
Well, we had an incident there that happened to one of our ex-members, and we actually had to stop investigating that night. So I think both. I got evidence of children, and I got evidence of somebody who's not so nice down on the first floor in the kitchen area. And there was like there's one point where someone's coming through the kitchen door, and the doorknob was loose. And it was an old metal hard doorknob, and it fell off and hit the floor, and you hear a loud bam, and right after that you hear a male's voice yell out, "I'm going to attack!" So and then also I got EVPs of children in the location. So I felt like you had a light and dark at the same time.
And I think sometimes when you have the light spirits, they can draw in dark spirits, even if maybe not connected to that house previously, but just dark energy from somewhere. That they almost seem to be attracted to those lighter energies.
And that place has been investigated so much, you don't know, is that the killer or is that somebody's tag along who remained behind? I often wonder that too. So
yeah.
I have a question in the chat room, Rob. This is kind of silly, so we're going to call it a random question. Are there a lot of animal spirits in Kansas City, considering all these slaughterhouses and barbecue joints?
Well, I've never encountered one. I've seen evidence of people had on video like something moving across the floor down the hallway, like a light, almost like it was a cat. But I didn't capture that, but I've seen that before. So is it out of the realm of possibility that Fluffy or somebody remains behind somewhere? It's possible.
Well, there's lots of old ghost stories of phantom dogs and so forth too. So
I've seen that kind of stuff. When I was a kid down on the farm, we had all kinds of animal spirits running around. So
yeah,
but. When I go to Oklahoma Joe's, no, I haven't encountered any pigs or bovine ghosts.
Cheeseburger or some chicken. But just kind of wondering. I haven't been to Oklahoma Joe's though, so I'm gonna have to come up there and eat that. I've heard
yeah, you will.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have to meet up sometime. That sounds like a plan. Well, how do we regroup after animal spirits?
Well, I'm sure there's no Furby spirits probably running around up there, although
we hope not.
I hope not. Hope there's no Furbies dying in Kansas City.
You haven't slaughtered any, have
Well,
you?
one had to die to make my hat, but It was a good cause.
Okay. Rob, tell us your approach to investigating.
Well, you know, it's changed over the years. When I first started, it's totally morphed into something different. I think now I kind of look at things clinically like I would in my healthcare IT career. So I look for patterns. That's my first thing. That's my approach. Is I like to take everything I've got in like a pie. You know, I work with my remote viewer, Harvey Althouse, out in San Francisco, and he calls into my investigations, not all of them, but some of them. And then I don't tell him anything what I'm going to do or anything about the place. I just give him the address, and then he kind of reads for me what he thinks. I take that as one slice of the pie. Then I do a lot of ITC. I work in Echo Box. I work in spirit boxes that I have, and I take anything I got from that, and then I take that as a slice of the pie, and then I go and I do all my regular video, and then I do my just regular EVP type evidence, and then I try to connect the dots between the two, and then I go back to any of the historical record and see if it tries to match anything that may have happened in the past or any individuals that may be there. And also, you know, when you're dealing with a home residence case, anyone that might be associated with the families or anything like that. So, you know, I'm always trying to connect the dots and not just have one piece of evidence that says, oh, you know, I got Colonel Mustard, but I'd rather have Colonel Mustard in the library with candlestick. So
I hear you. I agree with you there. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't really realize is all the background research and everything that goes into it. Not that we just walk in and capture something that may or may not make sense. And so I always like to see what different people's perspective is. Go ahead.
And what I'm also doing now, I'm trying to make sure I do as much data logging as I can. So I'm also capturing all the environmental factors and trying to match those back to the points where we have stuff happen. So it's not just collecting evidence, but there's also some kind of data behind it. So
I'm really interested in doing more data logging. What all do you log? What kind of
Well, I just got a new piece of equipment that's data logging everything for me, and it also records audio. It's a DMX meter, but it records the barometric pressure, the temperature, the AC EMF, the very low EMF, and the extremely low EMF. And then once you on location and you're recording all that information, you can download files from that. It'll create a nice graphic for you of what was happening in like a chart. So you know, like if my temperature dropped at this point, but my EMF, my very low EMF shot up at that point, you know, you might have some kind of paranormal activity going on versus if the AC's EMF's through the roof, so you know you're hitting the house's electricity. So
that way you can correlate exactly what is going on.
Right.
And it's hooked into audio as well?
Yeah, it records audio right along with it, which is really handy.
Oh, wow. Very interesting.
I always love stuff gets a little better all the time.
Well, and that's the thing. It just gets refined and new things applied. Would you say that's probably your favorite piece of equipment at this point, or?
Yeah, right now it's the one I'm carrying around in my right hand a lot. I walk around with a video camera in my left hand on a monopod, so I kind of my investigators see I look like Moses walking around. So.
Well, perhaps you'll have as much luck as he's.
But do you park?
Yeah. Nah, I wish I could, but no waters were parted.
Now, are we set up yet for files?
I don't know. He hasn't said anything.
No.
You know, Eric doesn't talk to me unless it's some random ass question about ghost animal spirits.
Well, I guess we should have followed up with whether or not Rob has.
He says I'm ready.
He's ready. Okay.
Born ready.
Okay, our producer's having a little fun at our expense.
I think he's drinking a lot behind the scenes.
We were going to go through some of the EVPs, Rob, and we were going to hit the cell phone captures first. Why don't you tell us exactly, what you mean by that, and set that up a little bit. And I think the first one will be, is it cloud?
Hey Eric, what's the first one?
It can be whatever you want. If you want to play that first one I told you about, we can play that. I'm trying not to say the name so nobody, you won't cloud nobody. They can hear it.
Okay, let's do the first one.
All right, here it comes.
So I'm picking up stuffiness, but I think it is from that only. So I'm picking up stuffiness, but I think it is from that only. So I'm picking up stuffiness, but I think it is from that only.
We're back.
Okay.
Was it good? We didn't get to hear it.
We didn't hear it. So, do you want to tell us about it, Rob?
Yeah, basically, cell phone EVPs are something I discovered that we were capturing without really trying. We work with Harvey Althouse, and we put everything over a speakerphone. So it's kind of like a conference call on an investigation. But we started noticing, hey, there's other voices talking that aren't us. And Harvey will hear him on his side, and I'll hear them on my side. And it's only one way, but it says things that couldn't really be cell phone interference, because I first thought, oh, it's just some kind of cell phone interference. But the things they're saying to us are things that you wouldn't just pick up randomly. So I don't know if we played that. If we played that file, I didn't hear it, but
yeah, we did. The first one was it the one that says cloud?
I have clout.
yeah, that one's from the Harrison Street Church, which is no more. It burned to the ground. But I was working with Harvey, and the person you hear talking in the middle of that is Harvey. Then you hear that voice come through. It says, "I have clout." So he was pretty proud of himself.
So basically, it's being picked up either at your end or at his end, but not both.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's interesting. Eric, why don't we play the second clip?
Okie dokie.
I feel if you're looking at the fireplace, she's to the right, pointing up at it.
Oh, I just got a voice over the.
The whisper.
It said something like "shut up."
I feel if you're looking at the fireplace, she's to the right, pointing up at it.
Oh, I just got a voice over the.
The whisper.
It said something like "shut up."
I feel if you're looking at the fireplace, she's to the right, pointing up at it.
Oh, I just got a voice over the.
The whisper.
It said something like "shut up."
I feel if you're looking at the fireplace, she's to the right, pointing up at it.
Oh, I just got a voice over the.
The whisper.
It said something like "shut up."
Okay, Rob, why don't you tell us what was going on in that clip?
Yeah, and that one we were at the Alexander Major's house, and Harvey was reading for us, and we were around a table, and we had the conference phone going, and suddenly you hear Harvey's voice at the very beginning there. Then all of a sudden that voice comes through and yells. It says "shut up." So it's almost like they don't like Harvey reading them. It's like they can know he's doing it. And so I just kind of told him to shut up. Didn't want to hear it anymore. And then you hear me talking after that, saying we heard that.
Very cool. Eric, why don't we do the third clip?
All right, here it comes.
You get a sense of where she's at right now? Was that you? Harvey? You get a sense of where she's at right now? Was that you? Harvey? You get a sense of where she's at right now? Was that you? Harvey? You get a sense of where she's at right now? Was that you?
I said we were going to listen to it again. No, I think we're live.
We are live.
Are we live now? Can
Yes.
you really see us? Are we really here?
Okay, John's having an existential moment, but while he's recovering, Rob, tell us what was going on in that clip.
Yeah, and that one, I'm at a private residence, and I'm working with Harvey, and in my left hand I have a cell phone, and in my right hand I have a millimeter, and I'm waving it out in this area where Harvey says, go there and stick your millimeter there. So as I'm doing that, this woman's voice comes over the cell phone and says, "Don't touch me."
Wow. And it was kind of soft, but I did catch "don't touch."
I was thinking I heard it loud at one point, but then it didn't seem that loud after that.
And I know we have one more that is set up. Let's go ahead and play it.
Here it comes.
Okay.
Roma, are you here? Roma, are you here? Roma, are you here? Roma, are you here? Roma, are you here?
Okay, Rob, go ahead and tell us what's going on in that one. Sounds like you were using a ghost box.
Yeah, that one I'm using the Mel SB7 when I first came out. It's at the Warnell House, and what's going on in that clip is Roma was John Warnell's second wife, and she lived a lot longer than his first wife, but she's not as beloved by the staff and as the first wife, Eliza. So what's happening there is actually it's not just the ghost box, but there's also an EVP in between of her. So she says at the very beginning, "Why to mock me?" in the ghost box, and then like an EVP comes through, an atmospheric EVP that says, "I'm here," and then after that it says "and before," which is tied back to the previous ghost box statement. So it's almost like she's talking at the same time in just the air and the device. But you actually hear when she says "I'm here," it echoes. So it's like it's totally different.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the more interesting catches I've heard off of the ghost box. I like it. That's pretty good.
And these were all different locations, right? These all the different EPPs.
Yeah, it's all different locations.
Yeah.
What's your opinion of the ITC devices?
I have a lot of success with them, and then sometimes I have no success with them. I like them because they also generate other activity, I find, besides just the devices themselves. So I do a lot of experimentation with them. It is something I work with quite frequently. I think they generate activity, but I don't spend the whole night doing that when I go to a place. But I definitely devote some time to it. So it's something I very much like to do.
In your experience, how do they generate other activity?
Well, I think I think it kind of draws them in. That when you start using those devices, you're kind of alerting these spirits in the area. I feel that you're here and you're trying to talk to them. So it's almost like you flip on a switch of the light and they all turn and start talking. It's like open mic night. You throw the mic on, and every spirit in a 2-mile radius comes flooding over there to speak on those devices. So I also use a new app. It's actually an app. It's called Echo Vox. It's something I've been working with quite frequently, and I have a lot of success with that. Probably even better than spirit boxes.
I've been hearing more about Echo Vox. How does it work differently than spirit boxes?
Basically, it's an app, and it's got several banks of just chopped up gibberish. It's just chip, 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 and it basically spins it at a really high speed, and it has an echo effect. And somehow they're able to take that gibberish and actually form sentences with it. So not only do I get just words in that one, but I get sentences all the time, and all kinds of responses, names, stuff that wouldn't just be gibberish. That's what's so interesting about it.
So it would eliminate some of the issues that you get with some of the spirit boxes that have the built-in dictionaries. Then,
well, most spirit boxes since they're using a radio. They're using radio frequencies to get their white noise. But this has no radio interference because there's no radio involved. So that eliminates that.
Yeah, because I'm always looking at ways of eliminating variables. One that always comes up, people talk about, we did an event last night and people were asking about it, in fact, or like the Ovilus. What are your thoughts on the talking boxes that have the built-in dictionaries?
Well, I have an Ovilus. I have an Ovilus X. I've used it a little bit, but I've never found it to be quite as successful as I'd hoped. My biggest problem with it is you can't tie. It's hard to tie the words back to any kind of it's so subjective as to what you're trying to tie those words back to, you know, because is it something really happening? Now, if I use it, I don't use the database dictionary of words. I like mine makes has a phonetic setting where it has to put pieces of phonetic alphabet together to actually make a word. I prefer to do that versus a database of 2,000 words, because then I can say, well, somehow it was able to put together these words, and it's not just, you know, it says, you know, something random.
Right. Well, we know someone in Texas with a team that they actually had one that basically all it would ever say was worm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And mine says, you know, my problem with it was that it kept saying the same several words just too often, and it just kind of made me think, okay, you know, I put it on phonetic and try it, but other than that, I'm not sure.
That was kind of our experience too, yeah.
What's your kind of going a different direction here? What's your team's protocol for evidence review?
Typically, we do it like this. I'm kind of big on my own audio and video. I prefer to do my own stuff. Most of the team does their own things. We do run a DVR system, and that we'll burn that off to DVDs and then hand that out to some of the junior team members to review that evidence. But that's typically how we do it. It's kind of every person reviews their own equipment, and then but we do split up that DVD evidence because it's just so lengthy for the person that actually owns the DVD, because we don't really have group equipment. We have everyone kind of brings what they have to the table, and I've got so much stuff now I don't even have time to use it all anymore. Probably time to part ways with some of it. So
well, yeah, we're that way. You never have time to use everything at one location. It doesn't seem like.
No. Not at all.
Well, that and the fact that people forget that when you're going through evidence, if you have 8 cameras, and you go for 4 hours, that's 32 hours of video.
Yeah,
right? So it takes forever to go through that, and not to mention your audio devices and so forth. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just it's crazy.
Luckily, I'm in the position my career, since I work from a home office, I can do my job and slap my headphones on for my audio and just turn it on and let it run during the day while I'm working. My kids are at school, so I have actually, if I'm not on a conference call, I've got quiet time to do it. So,
see that helps when you have an ability to do that a little bit.
Right.
What? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say video's a little tougher.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really is. And we often find that the speed of the video often dictates what you find, too.
Mm-hmm.
We run high-speed video and often find that you catch things at high speed that stationary cameras at 30 frames per second don't catch looking at the same place. So often we are looking at 2 cameras in the same spot. It just makes it even more evidence. So that's always a problem trying to deal with.
I find about 20 minutes on video is about all the human brain can handle before it starts to wander. So I try to do mine in little 20-minute segments and then stop and do something else and then come back to it.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Otherwise, you miss things. It's easy to miss things otherwise. We've talked a lot about more of the technology side of things. How does your team approach? Do you use sensitives or mediums?
Well, I mean, I do use Harvey Althouse, who's my, he's a full clairvoyant. I do use him. Now, I don't, like I was saying earlier, I don't take what Harvey tells me as fact. He's very accurate. He's very, very accurate. A lot of times I'll do a home case and I'll interview this family a couple times, and different members, and then sometimes I'll talk to Harvey before I go, and he'll start telling me things, and I'm like checking the marks off because he's hitting on all of these different points about them. And the funny part about Harvey, though, is you never kind of know what direction he's going to go. You're there to talk about possible spirit activity, but sometimes Harvey is drawn towards what's wrong with the roof of the house, or the basement needs work, or You just never know. He just kind of comes to him as it comes to him. So yeah, I mean, I do believe that the people have abilities. He's probably one of the only ones I work with at this point. I don't really have anybody local that goes on with us. I think as far as sensitives go, I think after doing this for so many years, a decade of investigating, I definitely can tell when spirit activity's heightened. I can feel it. You just get that feeling. You just kind of, it's like your body remembers and reacts to it. So, would I say that I'm having kind of psychic vision or anything like that? I would probably say no, but I definitely can sense when stuff's starting to pick up.
Well, I think it's like so many things. It's just practice that when you're exposed to something enough, you recognize it. It's just when I walk into a house that has really high EMF, I can tell before I ever pull out a meter.
Yeah. Start grinding your teeth.
Yeah.
And I think I think definitely what I wouldn't say I'm intuitive, an intuitive or sensitive, but I think I definitely have some switches have been turned on, that probably, in the 90s probably weren't turned on, as far as kind of sensing this type of stuff and what's going on.
Well, I find that I think as people investigate more, many do become more sensitive, and I think it's just an awareness. I think that you become more aware, and spirit tends to be more aware of you then too.
Well, and I think that's probably true about anything, especially when you're working with energy, is that you become more in tune to it, which is what intuitive is. But.
Right, and just recognize when it's present. Right. Yeah. You touched on talking about doing a lot of home investigations, and I know a lot of teams kind of run into some problems when they're doing a lot of home investigations, either not screening well or handling the people, the human issues involved. Right. What are some of the issues that, especially from someone who's been doing it quite a while, that you see perhaps are becoming more of a problem now when you're dealing with private homes?
Well, I think definitely, and I'm going to say this to anybody who's new to this field, if you're going to decide to go out and do private homes, you got to really interview, and not just once. And you got to screen these and screen the clients, because in this day and age of 50, 60 paranormal television shows and a new rash of movies that come out every 3 to 6 months about possession, or people, blood's coming out of the walls and all this stuff. People, I've noticed, I look for patterns because it's my IT background. So I notice, okay, suddenly I'm getting all these calls for cases, and then I'll go 6 months, 3 months, and I'll get no calls for cases. Now, granted, there's, when I started out, there were probably 2 or 3 paranormal investigation teams in Kansas City, and now there's probably 20. So there's probably a lot of other people catching these cases besides me. But I just notice it'll run in patterns. It'll be nothing, and then suddenly it's this big rash of all these cases. Now, is that because of the media? Is that because something's going? People are the latest Paranormal Activity movies out, or and then so you get this rash of calls. So you have to really step through these cases and look at the people and say, okay, what you have to be willing to ask questions that may be uncomfortable to ask when you're talking to these clients and dealing with them, because you don't really know about them, and you're going to you're potentially going to someone's house and you don't know who they are and what they're physically capable of. So we don't go anywhere alone on our team. It's always in pairs. If we're gonna go back and bring evidence back to them, it's in a pair. So.
Have you run into any particular situation or problem in that kind of situation that would be kind of an illustration of what people ought to look for and be wary of when they're starting out?
Yeah, you just kind of need to look for some signs, and don't be afraid to ask hard questions, because you got to. And they might be honest with you, and sometimes they're not. Now, if someone says to you, I had one where a guy's I've lived in this house a week and 3 people have been possessed in this house in that time frame. Obviously, it's like, okay, come on. There's either you're something on something, or there's something else going on. I'm not going to say that's what his problem was, but you just have to look for some things just too unbelievable to be true, and so you just kind of have to look for that stuff, and try and just ask a lot of questions. And sometimes you have to ask hard questions. That are you sick, and do you take any kind of medication for that illness? I mean, those are hard questions to ask somebody, but they're asking you to come out to their home, and you're, as a leader of a paranormal organization, investigation organization, you're responsible for your people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to make sure that not only are you providing a service, but that you're providing a safe environment for your own people. I agree wholeheartedly. We do the same things. Have you seen a rash of people who think they're dealing with inhuman entities or possessions?
I think that comes in waves. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you'll get, as like I said, I always look for patterns and everything, and sometimes you'll get those kind of things where people think that there's possession going on, and I can only say in probably all these years of investigating home cases, I ever had one case where I felt the place was really dark, and a lot of them, I'll go in, and I may get EVPs, but they're of inconsequential in nature. And if it was a true, what you would say, a demonic haunting, your religious idolatry and stuff that you have on the wall, your crucifixes and all that stuff, it would just be totally. They would just be flying off the walls, and so you kind of have to really look at those folks and is this really what's going on there, or do you have the entire Paranormal Show DVD collection in your under your television, and you're regurgitating things you've seen in media?
Well, yeah, and I think the media has not helped things recently, and there's been several, nationally covered situations where people have attempted their own exorcisms of family members and so forth.
Right.
What are your thoughts on the effect of the media and where it's going in the field?
It drives it a little bit, and it has for about the last 5 years. And you kind of got to try and separate what's on TV from what's going on in the field. And I'm kind of one of those people. I really hate to say it, but I'm kind of really I'm down in my own little world of the paranormal. I don't pay much attention to what's going on nationally, probably as much as a lot of people. There's a lot of it just because I'm busy as a dad and busy at my day job. So, I like to look I'm more of a techie at heart, and so I like to look at a lot of the new stuff that comes out as far as equipment that's scientific. If it drives it that direction, I'm interested. I'm always interested in things like that. But I mean, as far as like the possession and all that stuff, that's that I don't know. It seems a little too commonplace now, especially on television. That to me that would be such a rarity.
Yeah.
What's your group? How does your group feel about provoking?
I don't tend to provoke. I don't see the point when I get so much audio evidence without provoking. I mean, what is it going to get me? That's kind of what are my thoughts. I mean, yeah, you might insult some spirit that's gonna. Is it gonna fly out of the wall and beat you down? Well, probably not. But I just if it's not necessary, why do it? That's just kind of how I'll put that.
Well, and I know we personally we have dealt with investigators who've had some repercussions from that activity personally, and
I mean, we don't provoke, and I've been hit in the chest so hard that it's taken the wind out of me. So I mean, we don't see a point in it either. I was just kind of curious on what other investigators feel. I mean, I can't imagine provoking and causing I mean, like I said, it's so hard to knock the wind out, so I can't imagine provoking and causing any more violent reaction than what I've already seen. You know?
Well, think about what provoking is. You know, say the person was a living person. Are you going to walk into a bar somewhere and walk up to, you know, people you don't know and start cussing them out to their face? Well, yeah, you're gonna have a scrum. So
that's exactly how we portray it when we talk to our tour groups. Is that, you know, if I walked into your house and started calling you an a-hole, you're going to get up and knock me out. It's basically the same idea.
Right.
You know? So, I mean, these people were still people too. As far as we're concerned, they're still here. So there's no point in, you know, we've gotten so in tune with our spirits, for lack of a better word, and the tours that we do, the homes that we do tours in, that they actually know us by name. So, and you probably run into this yourself. So if you're that personable with something, then it's got to have intelligence, right? So why would you go in and treat it with disrespect?
Well, and I have an opinion on investigating that. I believe that spirits can read your mind, and I also believe that a lot of times they know you're coming before you even get there. So it's like they already know. It's like there's some kind of secret network behind the scenes. It's like they already know that you're going to show up, because you get these. How else can they? You know, you haven't told them their name, but you haven't told them your name, but they already are saying your name. And a lot of times, like especially doing ITC stuff, I'll get answers to questions before I ask the question when I go back and listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we've had that same kind of experience too, and especially places that we are a lot. That it's almost that you get those responses before you get it out, and they know you're coming and greet you at the door. We've had them just greet us at the door, saying our names.
Mm-hmm.
And say my name.
Oh, sorry, that was
wrong thought.
flashback.
But and I do agree with you, and I think that's something that's not talked about a lot. Is that I don't think that we humans perceive the communication as being verbal through sound, etc. And I don't think that's how it works at all. It's energy, it's telepathy, or however you want to term it.
And also, I believe this, that our perception of space and time is maybe different from what their perception of space and time is.
We agree.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly.
Absolutely.
And of course, there's a lot of theories too. That perhaps we're dealing with a time-space bend, and maybe we're actually communicating, getting live communications from a different time period or a parallel universe, etc. And what are your thoughts on those kind of theories?
I think anything's possible. There's nothing proven that we're speaking to or picking up spirit voices at this point. I mean, we think that's what it is. I obviously, my feelings are there are no experts in this field. I think there's people that know a lot and see the patterns, and I think they're getting closer. But every time you think you know how something works, I find it changes. What piece of equipment worked 6 years ago for me, some of it doesn't work now. I don't know why. It just stopped working. So now I moved on to trying something else. It's always morphing and changing. So, the theories behind what's happening, I think we're close on some aspects, but I think, this minute that you think you're close in this field, it kind of takes a right turn and it goes a different direction.
Yeah, it does seem like almost that they change. The energies change what they're doing almost at times. Mm-hmm. What direction do you see technology going from here?
Well, I think this ITC stuff will definitely expand and change. I think it'll morph into newer equipment, probably some with less interference, using something that's not radio based, which I feel really isn't that's the radio, but it's the manipulation of the radio waves. Just like I feel the cell phones are basically a manipulation of the microwaves. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how they're able to do that, but somehow they are and say things. So I think definitely detection devices that kind of move in those kind of ways, like in the X-rays and microwaves. And I think that's one direction this is going to go as far as the technology. Now, the biggest problem is getting that into a compact form that for a home user to do. Whereas I think a lot of the stuff that you could attempt to do now, you'd have to really go out and buy a lot of expensive pieces of equipment and combine them into your own little homemade device, you know.
Almost have to have a university behind you or something,
That's right.
driving it. But one thing direction I'm kind of going with my thoughts too is that it's not. I think a lot of people used to think, oh, it's just electrical energy or magnetic. I'm really moving towards. I don't think that activity is limited to any part of the energy fields. We just haven't figured out how to tap into that yet. What do you think?
Well, I think, if they can manipulate, like I was going with this, if they can manipulate a magnetic field, if they can manipulate an X-ray, if they can manipulate a microwave, who's to say they can't manipulate all those different types of energies? Maybe they can bend light. That's how we have shadow people. There's so many different ways that they can manipulate the natural energy of the earth and the physical world that we don't know exactly how they're doing it or if they're doing it. So we have these theories, but if they can manipulate one, who's to say they can't manipulate all of them?
Exactly. That's kind of where I'm going too. What are your thoughts on shadow people? I mean, a lot of people, tend to be scared of them or feel that they're, negative or not human, etc. What are your thoughts?
It's something I've never encountered in all these years. I've never encountered a shadow person. So,
Really?
Never. I did capture that shadow. It was actually one of my investigators at the Alexander Major's house, which is going up the stairs. But it didn't look like a classic shadow person, where it's more of a blob that forms into kind of a human shape as it's going up. But it's only captured in 3 photos at high speed, and then it's gone. So as far as seeing like the classic, what you picture a shadow person, no, I've never seen that or captured that. So, I mean, are they evil spirits that have come to the earth to wreak havoc? I mean, I don't know.
Come to the earth to wreak havoc.
I think
that would imply alien activity. Yeah. Where's my tinfoil?
Or another dimension. We may be writing the next paranormal movie here.
But I've heard them described by some people as that,
I have too.
These black spirits.
I tend to think, and we've encountered them several places, that they're human spirits, just as the traditional apparition, that they just manifest differently. And I like your thought about bending light.
That's exactly it.
And now with the new Harvard study out proving Einstein's gravitation theory, it lends itself to that. Bending time and light. That would make sense, perhaps, that you could manifest at a different time. And why would you be, there in your suit and tie and everything else? So perhaps on down the line we'll be able to prove that. You look confused, John.
Oh, do I? I thought this hat made me look intelligent.
He just brings out the color of your eyes.
Right.
Rob, what are things that you have going that you'd like to talk about?
Well, we're going to go to Waverly Hills next month. That's never been, so I'm gonna go venture there. Once in a while, I'll go to the big places and check them out and see what they're about. Maybe once a year. That's about usually what I can get to with my schedule these days. But that's my next investigation, and then after that, I've got some spread out throughout Kansas and Missouri up through July, and that's basically it's business as usual for us. We like to invest. We only investigate 2 times a month. That's all that we allow for my team. Everyone on my team is pretty much a business type professional, so that's pretty much about all the schedules will allow. So that is basically how far out we're booked.
What are you looking at me for? What?
2 times a month? We did 2 times last weekend. Firing her. You're fired. Wait a minute, you're the boss. Never mind, I quit. We'll be back next week.
Okay, I think I lost my train of thought.
That's all right.
Hey Rob, when you go to Waverly Hills, make sure you check out the dining room.
Okay.
When we went, the best experience we had was actually in the dining room, and a form of what looked like a little girl shape was seen, and EVPs caught. So we might check that out.
Definitely will.
It's such a massive place that you could be there for days, but you might check that out. That was the best luck we had. And we do want to point out that you are coming down to our neck of the woods in May.
Mm-hmm.
And checking out Kendrick House in Carthage, which is a Civil War house.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that you can add to some of your awesome evidence from antebellum homes. So
this will be my second time there. I went around 2006 with my previous organization. So I think the tools I got now are so much better and more advanced than what I had then. So I'm always interested to go back to places I went years ago and try my new methods and see, because you investigate once really isn't enough for a lot of places. That's definitely. I'm always excited to go to those antebellum Civil War houses. It's so much history and so much fun.
What's your bucket list of places to go, real quick?
Bucket list for me. Well, I always like ships. So I'm a U.S. Navy veteran. So any ships. I've been to the USS Hornet with just 4 other investigators, alone on the aircraft carrier. Played whistles over the 1MC and all kinds of stuff. So I definitely want to get back to the USS Hornet again. Any other kind of warships that are around, I'm definitely want to go to those. Currently, I'm trying to get out and investigate away from Kansas City. I've kind of beat the town to death after all these years. So we're definitely going on the road a little bit more. We're kind of looking for the off the beaten path places. So I think definitely, Waverly Hills is on my bucket list. There's a couple of other places, the penitentiary out at Eastern State. I'd like to go there, just before it maybe disappears. I'm always worried about these places disappearing before you ever really, get a chance to even visit them, even if I didn't investigate them, just to visit them. So I'm very much into that. I love Civil War sites. I'm very interested in investigating Civil War sites. We've investigated the Mine Creek battlefield in Kansas twice. It's a very, very bloody cavalry, one of the biggest cavalry battles of the Civil War happened in Kansas. Not many people know that. So, it's like kind of investigating a jungle, though, when you're out there, because all you can hear is wildlife. So, I definitely want to hit more Civil War battle sites. That's always on my bucket list.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I don't remember what I was going to say.
Well,
we have about a minute left, so is there anything you want to tell everybody before we take off out of here? Or?
Well, thanks for having me on, and if you want to know more about my investigations and our investigations, you can go to www.eliteparanormalkc.com, and we post most everything that's not of a private nature. So we put a lot of evidence out there. Judge for yourself what it is. I can't say I'm always right. There's probably sometimes I'm wrong on some of that evidence. So. Definitely go out and take a listen for yourself. What we played tonight was just 4 or 5 I probably got hundreds of EVP recordings out there. So, everyone go check it out.
Well, and we would encourage anyone that is in your area. I know you're trying to get away from Kansas City, but anyone out there that is in need of an investigation, get a hold of Rob and get an evaluation and go from there, because he's definitely a professional and knows what he's doing. And
thank you.
We we're looking forward to seeing you in May, and we'll have you back on the show before long. How's that?
Awesome. I'd love to.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on and being a good sport.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
And everybody stay tuned for Selena Roan and Robert Murch is a Ouija board expert. They're going to be together on the show Closer to Death. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, folks.
Have a good night.
See you next week.
Thanks, Rob.
Hi, this is Paranormal Science Lab Live. I'm Lisa,
I'm John.
and John's having a fun day today.
We're going to start a new thing starting this week. Send me a hat. I will wear it on air. This came from Harry Wheeler. Brought it to a tour last night. Gave it to me. So, guess what? I got a Furby hat.
So make it the most ridiculous thing you can find, and he'll wear it.
I will. I have no problem with it at all.
Getting going here. We're very pleased to have our guest today, Rob Garcia of Elite Paranormal in Kansas City, Missouri. Rob, how you doing?
Doing good. Thanks.
I understand you were investigating last night.
Yeah, I was. I did a case at a drive-in. It's kind of an iconic Kansas City location called the Boulevard Drive-In.
Oh, cool. What kind of activity did they have at the drive-in?
They had just had a lot of creepy feelings and shadow play and stuff like that. I mean, they didn't really have a huge history of paranormal activity, but they asked us to do it, and we decided to go ahead, and our schedule cleared out, so we went in there and did it last night. So
Cool.
it was kind of a neat thing.
I always I like doing locations like that are not what you typically think of as a haunted location. And I think we find that you get some of the more interesting evidence that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it was. I mean, I didn't really have any expectations. Well, I try to go into all my cases with no expectations, but it's what I have to say, this is paranormal. It'll probably be like at Villisca Axe Murder House, because the first time I ever went, it was, I've done, over the years now, I've probably done so many home cases and then all these historical locations, but I would say none of them were nearly as dark when you stepped into the place and as that location. Now that was just the one time I was there. The second time I was there, it was totally different atmosphere. So but that first time we went in there, that place, you could just feel that darkness change as you step through the threshold. And
an interesting thing there, and I always, when I talk to people who have investigated at Villisca, I always ask, because I have a real good friend who grew up within a few miles of there and actually did sleepovers in the house when it was still a residence. And so I hear stories from her as to, did I hurt you? I'm sorry.
A little bit.
And from her as to experiences of the people who live there, and then I like to hear what experiences people have investigating. Did you find that the activity seemed to be from the victims or from the killer?
Well, we had an incident there that happened to one of our ex-members, and we actually had to stop investigating that night. So I think both. I got evidence of children, and I got evidence of somebody who's not so nice down on the first floor in the kitchen area. And there was like there's one point where someone's coming through the kitchen door, and the doorknob was loose. And it was an old metal hard doorknob, and it fell off and hit the floor, and you hear a loud bam, and right after that you hear a male's voice yell out, "I'm going to attack." So and then also I got at that one, I've been there to see movies, I've been there for events. They have all kinds of stuff that goes on there, but I never really thought about investigating it until they asked us. And it's also part of there's like a local old-time horror movie host show, so they filmed us while we investigated for for that show that's broadcast locally here. So
Oh, cool.
sometime in the future we'll be on that channel for that Midnight Movie Maniacs, I believe is what it's called.
Oh, very cool, very cool. You'll have to update us if you got any evidence or anything cool off of that.
Yeah, definitely. You have to get out there and start getting through the stuff.
Rob, why don't we start out? I want to introduce you a little bit to our viewers. I know some of them know you, some of them don't. Tell us a little bit about how you got into the field.
Well, I actually got into the field via history more than paranormal. My education is computer science and history, and obviously I do the computer science part for a living, but the history part, still has a part of me. So, any chance I had to go to historical locations, I would. And I love Civil War history, and I love especially the Civil War history here in Missouri and Kansas. Mm-hmm. And so, I got invited years ago to go to a site with a paranormal group, and then I really was more interested in the history part. But once I was there, I figured out, hey, I get to go behind the scenes in this place. It's not just the stuff that on the museum tour. I get to go behind the scenes, so that was a big draw. And then a local group was advertising for members, and I ended up joining that group, and it was Kansas City Paranormal Research, which was my previous organization that I was with before. It had EVPs of children in the location, so I felt like you had a light and dark at the same time.
And I think sometimes when you have the light spirits, they can draw in dark spirits, even if maybe not connected to that house previously, but just dark energy from somewhere. They almost seem to be attracted to those lighter energies.
And that place has been investigated so much, you don't know, is that the killer or is that somebody's tag along who remained behind? I often wonder that too. So
yeah.
I have a question in the chat room, Rob. This is kind of silly, so we're going to call it a random question. Are there a lot of animal spirits in Kansas City, considering all these slaughterhouses and barbecue joints?
Well, I've never encountered one. I've seen evidence of people had on video like something moving across the floor down the hallway, like a light, almost like it was a cat. But I didn't capture that, but I've seen that before. So is it out of the realm of possibility that Fluffy or somebody remains behind somewhere? It's possible.
Well, there's lots of old ghost stories of phantom dogs and so forth too. So
well, I've seen that kind of stuff. When I was a kid down on the farm, we had all kinds of animal spirits running around. So
yeah,
but. When I go to Oklahoma Joe's, no, I haven't encountered any pigs or bovine ghosts.
Cheeseburger or some chicken. But just kind of wondering. I haven't been to Oklahoma Joe's though, so I'm gonna have to come up there and eat that. I've heard
yeah, you will.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have to meet up sometime. That sounds like a plan. Well, how do we regroup after animal spirits?
Well, I'm sure there's no Furby spirit.
Ran for a while until it kind of wore out, and then once it stopped, well, I'd already investigated quite a few places, so I reformed as Elite Paranormal of Kansas City with one of my co-founder Wes, who was also a member of that, and then we've been going 8 years now, so we've been investigating as Elite for quite a while.
I know you guys have investigated some very iconic places in Kansas City and have gotten some pretty awesome evidence. What are some of your favorite locations?
I think probably in the Kansas City Metro, my favorite location for me is the Alexander Major's house, because it's kind of where I had some of my best experiences and some of the more interesting stuff that isn't just audio. It's where we actually captured a shadow going up the stairs and morphing and changing into different forms. And, when I go there, it always seems to be active. I think that's probably one of my favorite places to go, it's an antebellum home here, one of the few surviving in the region. So I love to go there. Warnell House, it's always a great place as well. Another place here in the Metro that's an antebellum home. There's quite a few locations here that are really interesting. But then, I like to get off the beaten track and find new places that no one's ever really thought about going to before. So that's also kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, I think sometimes finding new locations that haven't been hunted, you tend to find new kinds of evidence and sometimes more spectacular evidence. What would you say is your most compelling experience you've had?
I think probably for me the most compelling, like I had to